It's about that time to rippity rip. Get on the Bitcoin rocket ship. Seatbelts, please, we're ready to leave. It's time to rippity rip. Up to the moon, lickety split. Party on the Bitcoin rocket ship. The price is ripping, ship is tripping. We're loving the rippity rip. It's about that time to rippity rip. Get on the Bitcoin rocket ship. Seatbelts, please, we're ready to leave. It's time to rippity rip. We all surf the orange wave, the US dollar in its grave. Godzilla, Omega, massive candle. How much pump can you handle? It's about that time to rippity rip. Get on the Bitcoin rocket ship. Seatbelts, please, we're ready to leave. It's time to rippity rip. It's time to rippity rip. Orange raindrops nourish the earth. Bitcoin freedom, what is it worth? More than dollars, more than gold. Showering massive wealth untold. Wonder has us in its grip. Don't wanna see no dippity dip. Flying high, all-time high. We're loving the rippity rip. It's about that time to rippity rip. Get on the Bitcoin rocket ship. Seatbelts, please, we're ready to leave. It's time to rippity rip. It's time to rippity rip. It's time to rippity rip.
It's time to rip. What's up, guys? It's Saturday, June 25th, 2024. We're at the Bitcoin block height of 880,841. Today's Bitcoin price, as you can see, is 104,560. And for $1, guys, $1 today, at this moment in time, you can get yourself 956 Satoshis. And yes, I said it, for $1. My goodness, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Satoshi Saturday. I think I'm the only one that does this. The official Satoshi Saturday, episode number 50. The 50-year-old's doing number 50. So that's great, man. I'm very proud of that. It's crazy that it's been going by that fast. And as you can see from the title, Satoshi Saturday number 50, UTXOs, what are they and why they're important? Now, as you guys can see right here in the transaction fees, this is going to be very important and very pertinent to this video. This is the Bitcoin layer 1 right here, okay? These purple ones right here, guys, these are the Bitcoin blocks that have been mined all the way back from January 3rd, 2009 and up to this point of 880,841. And in each side of one of these blocks, there's transactions. This one was kind of light. It's 1,504 transactions. The one before that was 3,778. And then these are in the mempool. These are waiting to get mined, right? So the miners have to get paid two ways. They get paid by the subsidy, which is 3.125 Bitcoin when they solve the mathematical equation of a block, but they also get paid by transaction fees. And these are the transaction fees right here. And they're very low, guys. And by the way, if you want to move some Bitcoin on the base layer, it's a great time to do that. Transaction fees right now are 2 sats per V byte for no priority. And for low, medium, and high priority, that's 3 sats per V byte. And we're going to get into the definition of what a UTXO here in a minute if you guys don't know what it is. But basically, long story short, with these transaction fees right here, if you want to move some Bitcoin around, and we'll get into that later in the video, you want to keep your UTXOs as big as you can for as long as you can. And again, the bigger the UTXO size, the size of the UTXOs is actually relative because, again, back in the days, UTXOs were a lot bigger than what they are now because, again, Bitcoin's so expensive right now. So in the future, guys, when you want to move your Satoshis around, these transaction fees are going to be very, very important. Each block is finite, just like Bitcoin, right? There's only a certain amount of space that you can get in here. As you can see, it's about 3,700 here, 851. That's a really low one. 1,700. It can fit about, I think it's about 4,500 or 4,000, something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. So again, in the future, when more and more people are moving Bitcoin on the base layer, these transaction fees in the future are going to play a big role. So my philosophy is with your UTXOs is simple. Keep them as large as you can until you can't. And size is relative, guys. So what is a UTXO? I found this definition on the Brave website, on the Brave search bar, and you can screenshot that if you like, but let's read it real quick. Bitcoin UTXO. In Bitcoin, an unspent transaction output, a UTXO, represents a specific amount of Bitcoin that you have received but not yet spent. Each UTXO is like an individual bill in your wallet, which we'll get into later, each with a unique value. For example, a balance of 0.52 Bitcoin, or 52 million sats, I like to call it, in your wallet may consist of several UTXOs like 0.2, which is 20 million sats, 0.5, which is 15 million sats, 0.17, which is 17 million sats. Each UTXO is distinct and can hold any amount of Bitcoin. They are pieces of Bitcoin you haven't spent yet, and you use them to make new payments. When someone sends you Bitcoin, what you receive is a UTXO. The Bitcoin balance in your wallet is the total of all UTXOs received. A UTXO is an output of a Bitcoin transaction. An output exists as a UTXO until it is used as an input in a future transaction. Once a UTXO is used as an input in a transaction, it is considered spent and can no longer be used. UTXOs employ key cryptography to ascertain and transfer ownership. More specifically, the recipient's public key is formatted into the UTXO, thereby limiting the capability to spend the UTXO to the account that can demonstrate ownership of the corresponding private key. A valid digital signature associated with the public key must be included for the UTXO to be spent. Understanding the UTXO model and how to manage UTXO can help you navigate and use more Bitcoin or Satoshis effectively. For instance, regularly buying Bitcoin and securing it in self-custody is smart, but most people do it incorrectly because they do not consider future expenses like we talked about before. If you frequently receive small amounts of Bitcoin, you may be shocked by the high transaction fee you would pay when spending your Bitcoin at some point in the future. Managing UTXOs can help reduce future Bitcoin transaction fees, which is increasingly important in a world where on-chain fees continue to rise. Absolutely. So again, you want to keep your UTXO size for as big as you can, for as long as you can. So to go further into this, let's watch a video from Nathan from the Bitcoin course, and let's see what we can learn about Bitcoin UTXOs.
Hey, what's up? It's Nathan here with the BTCcourse.com. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you about UTXOs, or unspent transaction outputs. And I'm going to do a little demonstration on PowerPoint here. And then we're actually going to hop over to a live Bitcoin wallet and actually create real UTXOs and consolidate them and send them so you can actually see what it actually looks like versus just, the theory of UTXOs. I want to show you the actual thing, but we got to cover the theory first before we get into the actual demonstration. So let's go ahead and get straight into it. Let's say that you're buying Bitcoin on an exchange and you're going to dollar cost average. Let's say that you're buying $20 of Bitcoin a day. So you buy your $20 and you send it to your hardware wallet because you want to keep your Bitcoin in cold storage. So that way Sam Bankman-Fried doesn't come and steal your Bitcoin, or somebody else, Mashinsky, come steal your Bitcoin, or whoever comes steal your Bitcoin, right? You're doing the right thing, putting it in cold storage. So you go buy 20, move it over. Next day, you buy another $20 at the exchange, move it over to your hardware wallet. Next day comes, you buy another $20 at the exchange, move it to your hardware wallet. Next day, another $20 from the exchange, hardware wallet.
Yeah, guys, you definitely don't want to do that. That's a mistake I made when I first got into Bitcoin. I was buying on Cash App, and every time I got to like $30 or whatever, I just moved it to my ledger at the time I did. And what ended up happening is when I bought my first cold card and I had to move it over there, I had like a lot of UTXOs, and it was a nightmare. And I had to pay fees on each one of them, and it's crazy. I could have just waited. Instead of, let's say it was 1 million Satoshis total, right? Instead of having like 40 different UTXOs and paying a fee on each one of them, I could have just had one big fat UTXO of 1 million Satoshis. And that's where I made a mistake at. But now what I do is I keep at least between 97, 98% up to 99% on my cold storage, and the rest I put on my hot wallet. And then what I do is once I get a UTXO big enough to move, let's say it's 1 million Satoshis or 100,000 Satoshis, whatever. Let's use 1 million Satoshis. That's a really big UTXO in the future, or 100,000, whatever you're comfortable with. Once I get up to that, then I move it from my hot wallet or my Lightning wallet, hot wallet, over to my cold storage for long term, and I'll never move it after I do that. But while I have my Satoshis on the hot wallet, when I spend them and when I tip somebody or orange pill somebody, something like that, I'll zap it to them, spend it, and replace it. That's why I personally like Strike, guys. This is not a commercial for Strike, but Strike is my exchange and my hot wallet at the same time. So as soon as I buy it, it just goes right into my hot wallet, which is a Lightning wallet, or a great one. It works really, really well. And I just sap sats to people. Like when I get my haircut, if I tip them $10, I give them, 9,000 Satoshis or whatever it is, zap it to them, and then I replace it and I buy it right out of my bank account. So yeah, that's what I use personally. And again, you want to keep your UTXOs as big as you can. If the question is, does size matter? It does. And if your girl told you it doesn't, she lied to you.
Next day, same thing. Buy it on an exchange, move it to your hardware wallet. So you got $100 of Bitcoin in your hardware wallet. So safe and secure. That's awesome. But there's a little issue here. So every time you sent that Bitcoin from the exchange to your hardware wallet, you've created a UTXO, or unspent transaction output. And you can kind of think of this as like a little chunk of Bitcoin. So you have a little chunk of $20 or $20 worth of Bitcoin here, $20 here. And yes, Bitcoin's broken out in Satoshis, but for simplicity, we're just going to use dollars because everybody can think in dollars versus Satoshi. So please just bear with me if you're mad that I'm saying dollars instead of Satoshis. Yes, it would be Satoshis, but for practical purposes, let's just say it's $20. So $20 chunk of Bitcoin, another $20 chunk of Bitcoin. So basically you have 5 chunks of Bitcoin here. Now, the thing is, if you want to go to send these 5 chunks of Bitcoin, it's going to cost you a reasonable amount in fees. See, each chunk of Bitcoin takes up space in the block on the blockchain, and you have to pay money for the space that you're taking up in those blocks. So if you have a bunch of UTXOs, you're going to be taking up a lot more space in the block, and you're going to have a lot more fees when you go to send your Bitcoin. So let me say it another way. Bitcoin doesn't care how much Bitcoin you're sending. You can send 1 million Bitcoin, but if it's all within one UTXO, you're going to pay like a teeny tiny little fee. However, if you're sending maybe $10 worth of Bitcoin and you have it spread across 100 UTXOs, well, you're going to be eaten alive by fees, and that $10 probably won't even get to where you're trying to send it, because it's going to just be consumed by fees, because those 100 UTXOs that you're sending take up so much block space that it costs a lot of money to be included in the block. And so it's going to be very hard to send that $10 worth of Bitcoin. And when we do the practical example, you'll see some of the fees and some examples and stuff like that. So hopefully it'll click when we do it live.
So yeah, again, he's absolutely right. You can take the same amount of Satoshis and break them into 50 different UTXOs, and it's going to be, each one it's going to cost a lot of money. But if you put it into one UTXO, it's better. So again, you want to keep your UTXOs as big as you can. People ask me all the time, what's a good size for a UTXO? I say this: think about it in the future. What do you think the price is going to be in the future? And label each UTXO what you want it to be, right? Like if you want it to be, because again, you're talking about the most finite asset on the planet, guys. This is not something to play with. 100,000 Satoshis may be $100 today or $104 today, but in the future, his purchasing power is going to be much more than that. We all know that, because again, it's so finite. You want to keep your UTXOs as big as you can for as long as you can. But let's say you want to buy a car in the future, or a house, or a mobile home, or a business, or whatever you want to buy. Make sure you label that UTXO. So, okay, I want to buy this then, maybe in 10 years or 20 years, and think about what the Bitcoin price is going to be by then. Nobody knows, of course, but look at the past cycles, look at what things are costing now, look at what things are costing in Satoshis today, because everything is getting cheaper. I believe a house today is like 4 point something Bitcoin for a house. A few years ago, it was 20 Bitcoin and 100 Bitcoin and 600 Bitcoin and thousands of Bitcoin. How much do you think a house is going to be in 10 years? 1 Bitcoin, half a Bitcoin, 0.25 Bitcoin? I don't know.
You do have a bunch of UTXOs. Well, you can consolidate your UTXOs into like one big UTXO if you want to do that. And usually you want to consolidate your UTXOs when the fees are very, very low, like 1 sat per VByte, like the lowest they could possibly be. That's when you would go ahead and consolidate your UTXOs into one big UTXO. And so that way, if the fees, jump way up again, well, then you're not paying an arm and a leg to do Bitcoin transactions. So if you consolidated them, you could merge all 5 UTXOs into just a $100 UTXO, and then we'll get rid of these real quick. So you'd consolidate all those 5 into a $100 UTXO, and then your fees would be much lower on future transactions, because you would just be using 1 UTXO instead of 5 UTXOs. So then what should you do instead of sending $20 each time from an exchange? Well, what I do is I wait until I build up $1,000 worth of Bitcoin on the exchange. And yes, it is a little risky to leave your Bitcoin on an exchange, but that's why you leave like, an amount that you could lose. Like, yeah, it would suck to lose $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, but I'm not going to be homeless if that happened.
Yeah, he's right. It is risky to leave it on an exchange. It's also risky to leave it on a hot wallet too, because it's connected to the internet. When you're using an exchange that is not a Bitcoin only one, I think you're taking even more risk. And again, I'm not saying it's a 0% risk with Strike or Swan or Bitcoin Well or any other Bitcoin company, But I believe the chances of that go down, or you getting rug pulled, or the company going out of business and not giving you your Bitcoin back or something like that. Again, that's why I use Strike. There is risk, of course, but again, you have to figure out what your risk is. You know what I mean, and what you're willing to do. But for me, I like $1,000. That's pretty good. Right now, that's 1,000,000 Satoshis about. That's a pretty good size, but it's, it's big or small compared to, relatively speaking, what you make. But just figure out what you want to do, what's the risk you want to take, and how big you want your UTXOs for in the future.
Once I build up $100 worth of Bitcoin on an exchange, then I just send that $1,000 chunk over to my hardware wallet where, I have $1,000 UTXO. And then if I need to perform a transaction or send it anywhere, then I'm only referencing that one UTXO and I don't have to combine a whole bunch of them together in order to make a payment. And I want to set up one more scenario before we go into the practical example. Let me move my hardware wallet over here. So I have that $1,000 UTXO over here. And let's say that I want to buy something from a store. And let's say that I want to buy something for $100. So how that would work is my entire $1,000 UTXO would go out of my wallet and it would get split up. So it gets split up into 3 pieces. So it gets split up into $100, and that $100 would ultimately go to the store. And then another, let's say $897, and that would come back to me on my hardware wallet, and that would be called or considered change. And then there'd be like a $3 fee. That would be the fee that I paid the Bitcoin miners for the transaction. So that would go over to the miners, and that's the fee for them, including my transaction in the block. So miner fee.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. And he's going to show you too. I like that example because it's always going to be split up into 3s. The first amount's going to go to the person that's going to receive it. Then the miner takes their fee out for putting it in that block for that transaction fee. And then the rest goes back to you. And I love it. But again, him saying a store, I know it's just an example, but you want to look at the base layer here as big ticket items right here, right? You're going to have pretty big UTXOs in the future. And you want to make sure that big ticket items are here. Banks and big money transfers and stuff like that are going to go on layer 1, the base layer. The stuff that you have on your hot wallet or your exchange or something like that, or your Strike wallet or whatever, is going to be for smaller things, But you want to look into the future and say, okay, well, if I want to buy some big stuff or have my life savings, that's going to go on the base layer. Because again, the fees are going to be relatively high in compared to the layer 2 or layer 3 or whatever we're going to have in the future. Base layers for big stuff. So keep this in mind. Base layers for big stuff like a house or a business or a car or something like that, something big in the future. And then the stuff on your hot wallet and you're using your Lightning Network to zap some sats and stuff for daily small stuff that you can do on a daily basis.
The miners, and that's the fee for them, including my transaction in the block. So miner fee. And so now what I would have is a UTXO valued at $897. The store would have one valued at $100, and then the miners would have my $3 fee. And so that's how UTXOs work when you transact with them. So let's go over and actually do it live, and I'll show you what UTXOs look like and how they work and everything. All right, so here I am in Strike, and I'm going to be using it to buy Bitcoin. And then over here, I have Sparrow Wallet loaded up.
I highly recommend you guys, if you don't have the Sparrow Wallet on your desktop, it's only for desktop. Download that right now. I'm serious. If you got to watch a YouTube video on how to do it, download the Sparrow Wallet right now. It's hands down the best. It's the best app for your Bitcoin. It really is. Download the Sparrow app on your desktop.
And I'm using it to work and everything. All right, so here I am in Strike, and I'm going to be using it to buy Bitcoin. And then over here, I have Sparrow Wallet loaded up, and I'm using it to access my hardware wallet here. So I'm going to do several transactions in order to create several UTXOs so we can play with them.
Don't use Ledger, guys. Okay, he had just had a little Ledger. Again, not financial advice. Don't use that. Get yourself a cold card or a Blockstream Jade.
So what I'm going to do is a receive, and so I'm just going to go ahead and click on this QR code scanner right here, and I'm going to scan my QR code, and I'll just send $10 over here. And next, and yep, that looks good. So I'll confirm it. And so that transaction should be headed to my hardware wallet shortly. So I'm going to say from Strike, and there we go. I see it right there. New mempool transaction, 44,511 sats are headed my way. All right, so from Strike, and then I'm going to do another address. So this is a brand new address, trying to keep privacy. It's a good idea to use a different wallet address for each transaction that you do.
Absolutely. That's huge. Every time you do something on your Sparrow, when you're moving your Bitcoin or your Satoshis into your cold storage, every time you do it, generate a fresh new address every single time. Now, you don't have to trust me, verify that, but I'm telling you right now, you don't want to have the same wallet having UTXOs and transactions going to the same wallet, because again, you don't want anybody seeing one wallet getting all these Bitcoin. That's why you want to have a bunch of different little addresses so it looks like a different bunch of wallets. You don't want people knowing how much Bitcoin you got and stuff like that. And you don't want anybody in your business, and potentially you don't want to get tracked.
We're going to go ahead and send another $10 to this one and confirm. So Strike purchase 2, and I'll get another address now and another mempool transaction. So that's coming into my wallet. So let's go ahead and make another transaction real quick. Another $10 next, and confirm. And this is going to be strike transaction 3 and 4. So I'm going to do some bad privacy protocol. There's my transaction right there. And I'm going to actually send the same or a different transaction to the same address. So I'm going to reuse my address, which is not good protocol, but I want to do it anyway for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and scan that and send $10 again and confirm. And then for the sake of example, I'll get the next address and strike payment 5. And so I'll go ahead and scan one more time. And this time I'll do $11. I know I'm probably getting different amounts of sats each time, but we'll go ahead and confirm and check. And okay, so now I should have created 5 UTXOs in my wallet. So if I come over here to UTXOs, I should see 5 UTXOs. And I do now that it's loaded in here. So I have 5 UTXOs in my Bitcoin wallet because I did 5 separate transfers from the exchange over to my hardware wallet, which created those 5 UTXOs, if you remember that example. And you can see Sparrow Wallet tells me that I kind of messed up, like right here. I use the same address twice, that M4U. So I use that same address, but you can see that it still created 2 separate UTXOs. So just because you're using the same address again and again and again, doesn't mean you're just going to have one UTXO. You're just going to have several UTXOs within that same address. So that's something to keep in mind, that reusing addresses isn't good for privacy, and it's not good for UTXO management either. So there's really no reason to reuse the same Bitcoin address, unless maybe you're doing donations or something like that, and you want to have like a public facing address, then maybe that's okay. But if you're doing your own private stuff, then you want a different address for each transaction that you receive. Alrighty, off my little soapbox. And so you can see, I have the 5 UTXOs in here, and this is essentially what they look like. There's little outputs and things like that. I see my label here of how I labeled them. And this one doesn't have a label. I guess it didn't stick. I think this was strike payment 1, because I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this must have been the first one here. And you can see the amounts of each UTXO. So it's broken down in sats instead of dollars, but I sent $10 each time, and it bought a different amount of sats each time I did it. And so let's go ahead and talk about sending now real quick. So if I come up here and I just click on one UTXO and I want to send it, click on send and give it a label, send to store. Let's say I'm trying to buy something. And we come down here to look at the fees. We can see that it's going to cost me 1,311 sats to send this one UTXO. And that's if I'm sending the max 1 UTXO. Now I could lower the fee to 1 sat per VByte, which is the lowest fee possible. And it would only be 110 sats, which is about 2 cents. So, that's pretty reasonable. But of course, if the mempool is like slammed and you're at like 100 sats per VByte, well, then it'd be a $2.57 fee to send, this one UTXO. And, that might make it viable. That's like a 20% fee to do this Bitcoin transaction. So that's not good. Now, let me back out here to UTXOs.
Like I said, right here, the fees are cheap. It's only 2 sats per VByte, 3 sats per VByte. And that's really, really cheap. So if you have one big UTXO, you can send a few $100,000, couple hundred, thousands, millions, or whatever, for pennies on the dollar. So again, the higher the fees go, the more you have to pay. And it's the opposite. You want to have big UTXOs, small fees. So again, you want to make sure your UTXOs are big and your fees as small as you can get them.
So send selected, and let's drop it down to 1 sat per VByte. So 1 sat per VByte is 381 sats, which is about 8 cents. So that's 4 times more than when you're just sending that one UTXO. So you got to pay for each UTXO. Like I was saying in that example, if the fees were like 100 sats per VByte, which they have gotten that high, then I'd be paying like a $9 fee to send those 5 UTXOs. And so that makes the fee like 20%. So it's very, very expensive to have a bunch of little UTXOs because you're going to have to pay fees on each UTXO that you're sending. And so if I have to combine all 5 UTXOs, it's going to cost me a lot more money. Whereas if I was only sending the one UTXO, it's a lot less. I think it was 101 to send one UTXO, 110 sats at the lowest, 1 sat per VByte, 110 sats versus if we sent all 5, then we would have to spend 381 at the lowest possible fee range. So it'd be much better if I just had one UTXO worth $50 versus 5 UTXOs that are each worth $10, right? Because of those fees. And so this brings me to a good point. So if the fees are really low, like if you go to the mempool, so here we are in mempool.space, and we can look at what the fees are. And it looks like for about 2 sats or maybe 3 sats per VByte, I could get in that next block. And so it might be a good time to go ahead and consolidate my UTXOs into one big UTXO. Remember, I demonstrated that in the PowerPoint example where I merged all 5 into that $100 UTXO. Well, the same concept here. So this is how you could consolidate UTXOs if you have a bunch of them. So let's say, I have 5 UTXOs right here, and I want to consolidate them into one $50 UTXO. I go ahead and grab an address. and I would call it consolidate. So basically, I'm going to just send all of my UTXOs to myself, and that will merge them all together into one UTXO. So let me grab my address here, and I'll click on Get Next Address, and then I'll go to UTXOs, select them all, and send selected. And I'm going to go ahead and paste my address there, call this consolidate. And I'm going to go ahead and put it at 3 sats per VByte, so that way I can finish this video today. But if I really wanted to get the best price, I would set it at 1 sat per VByte. And I'm going to go ahead and create transaction and finalize transaction. I'm going to go ahead and sign it. And I rescan real quick. All right, so my transaction is now signing. And then I'm going to go ahead and broadcast the transaction. And we can see the diagram here. All 5 of my UTXOs are combining into one UTXO, and I'm also paying a little fee. So let's go ahead and look at this transaction in the mempool. So here I am in the first block here, and we can see all 5 UTXOs merging into one big UTXO right here. So it's doing what I think it should. Let's come back to Sparrow real quick, and let's go to my UTXOs. And I can see right here that I have now one UTXO that's 225,000 sats, or roughly $50. And you actually see the dollar amount right here. So $50 all merge onto one UTXO, or unspent transaction output. Now let's say that I want to send $30 to some address somewhere. And so let's see how that happens and how our UTXOs work. So I'm going to come over here to send. I have an address here. I'm going to say top up Albi wallet. So that way I keep track of what the heck I'm buying. And let's go ahead and let's do max real quick. And so let's say I want to send 180,000 sats. We'll send a little less than that. Go with 135,000 sats. That's about $30. And so now that I'm only sending that one UTXO, like my transaction fee would only be 141 sats versus, probably closer to like 500 sats or more if I, increase my fee rate. And one of the reasons why this isn't 101 sats per VByte is because there's change coming out of this one. So if I was to send the max, it'd be 110 sats to do it. But since, there's a little bit of change coming, which is money coming back to me. Remember my example that $897 came back to me. So there's going to be change coming back to me. So that's why it's a little bit more. But if I was sending the whole thing, it would only be 101 sats versus the 387 sats or whatever it was for the 5 UTXOs. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and set a fee real quick and then go ahead and execute this transaction. So create, finalize transaction, sign it, and I'll go ahead and sign on my ledger here. And then I'm going to go ahead and broadcast that transaction. And there we go. 135,452 sats have left my wallet. And if I go back into my wallet and I go to my UTXOs, I can see that I now have a UTXO that's 90,341 sats. And I can see that it is from topping up my Albi wallet. And this is some change right here. So that's that change that came back to me. And now it's its own UTXO. So I'm hoping that between the PowerPoint presentation and this actual live demonstration, you can understand a little bit more about how these UTXOs work and just common practices. Basically, if you're creating a UTXO, try and make a larger UTXO rather than a bunch of little small ones, because you have to pay fees for each UTXO that you include in a Bitcoin transaction, because Bitcoin transactions are based off of the amount of data that you're including. And so the more UTXOs you include, the more data you're including, the higher the fees will be. And if you have lots of little tiny UTXOs, well, your fees might be more than your UTXOs are actually worth, and that would not be good. So you want to have larger UTXOs, and you can consolidate your UTXOs when the fees are low. If it's 1 sat per VByte, and you have a bunch of UTXOs, that's like the time to consolidate them. And I really hope this is making some sense. If you found this video helpful, I appreciate any sorts of likes, comments, subscribes, and/or please follow me at thebtccourse.com. It's a free website with Bitcoin training. You can ask me questions, things like that. Just trying to do my part to help Bitcoin, even though Bitcoin doesn't need me. I need Bitcoin. But anyway, I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Yeah, there you have it, guys. Great job, man. Make sure you subscribe to that channel. I love that, man. I learned so much from doing that, but you won't learn unless you actually do it. So download, please, guys, download that Sparrow wallet. Make sure you're using it and watching the tutorials and everything else, and make sure you get practice, not just watching it, but actually doing it. All right, guys, so let's wrap this thing up. This is why I always tell you guys to study Bitcoin, right? And this is a great way to study. Watching videos like we just watched, learning how the Bitcoin base layer works, the transaction fees, why UTXOs are so important, and how big they are, and what are you going to do with them in the future, and the transaction fees and things like that. It's just so much stuff because, again, guys, this is a brand new money system, and it's going to take a while. It's not overnight. This is a proof of work system, and it's going to be something that everybody's going to be using. Everybody in the world is going to be using this base layer of money. They just are. And again, on the base layer where the transaction fees are and when the UTXOs kick in, those are for big purchase items, guys. The Lightning wallets or stuff like that are just small little purchases, but the UTXOs, guys, again, you got to keep them as big as you can for as long as you can. Now, remember, these UTXOs are going to be for you, your families, and generations to come. Just about 1,000 Satoshis today for $1 seems like it's nothing, right? But in the future, in 30, 40, 50, 60 years, for people that don't even know you, that's going to be somebody's yearly income in 40, 50 years. I'm telling you, man. I know that sounds crazy. They're going to be breaking the Satoshis into micro Satoshis and fractal Satoshis and all this other stuff. And these things are so, so valuable because they're so, so finite. And everybody's going to want it. All the energy is going to seep into this, guys. So make sure, please, guys, you understand this stuff by studying it, stacking it, and doing everything in your power to get as much as you can, as fast as you can. So, guys, listen, I say this all the time. I know I sound like a broken record, but I got to say it, guys. Your family is going to be building statues of you in the future because you guys are going to be legends. You guys are going to be iconic to your family. People that are not even going to be born yet are going to be saying, man, I'm glad my grandpa or my great grandpa or my great grandma did this. I'm glad they studied it and put in the time and the effort and the work for our family. I can't believe they did it. Now we enjoy our lives because of what he did and what she did. And that's why I say, and I always say, man, people are going to be working for this stuff. People are going to be putting so much energy into this in the future, and they're going to be doing everything they can to do what they can to get it. And that's why I always say, guys, stack Satoshis today, guys. So you and your family don't have to work for those exact same Satoshis tomorrow. I love each and every one of you, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace and love, guys.